Hi everyone, welcome to the Coding Channel. Today is the 19th episode of our Java programming tutorial series. And in this episode, we are going to talk about one-dimensional arrays in Java. This and more when we come back. Welcome back to the Source Code channel. Now, our source code for this episode will focus on Java arrays. Now, arrays are used to store multiple values in a single variable instead of declaring separate variables for each value. Now, for you to better understand the arrays in Java, let's take a look at this example. Now, normally, if we want to have let's say 10 variables of integers, we declare it by having an integer data type here, and then the numbers 1 to 10. And for example, if we want to store a value to it, we just simply assign it by having this assignment statement. Okay, and then for example, if we want to store all the even numbers, the first 10 even numbers or integers in each of our variables from numbers 1 to 10, so we assign it this way. Now, what if we want to have hundreds or even thousands of variables just to store 100 or thousands of even numbers? So by following this, the flow of this program, most probably we are going to add or to have 100 of variables, and then also 100 or thousands of lines of code just to have the initialization. Okay, so if you are in this type of situation, the only solution to simplify this problem is to use the Java array. And there are actually two types of Java array. The first one is the one-dimensional, and the second one is the two-dimensional arrays. Now, in this episode, we will going to tackle only the first type, which is the one-dimensional array. Now, for you to better understand how to declare an array, I have here now the three possible ways on how to do it. If you want to have an integer name of an array number, for example, so we have this type of declaration. The only difference is the placement of the square bracket. So you can just attach it after the data type, or before the array name, or after the array name. So these are all valid syntax in array declaration. So it's like having declaring a variable, but this time we only use one variable name here. So this time, this one is a number. The number here is an array integer now. Okay, now to instantiate or create an array, we use this syntax after declaring. Okay, so we instantiate or create this by having this syntax. Okay, so the array name equal sign, and then a new keyword, and then the data type, and then we specify the size. Let's say, for example, 10. So somewhere in memory, after this declaration and instantiation, we now have a total of 10 elements of number integer array. Now, we can simplify these declarations and instantiation all in one line by having this. So int number is equal to new int, let's say 100. That's the size of our array. Okay, now to initialize the arrays in Java, this one is the first way on how to do it. So we can just manually assign a 2 to the first element. Take note that we have now the num sub 0. After, for example, we declare here a 10, okay, so that's the size of an array. So somewhere in memory, think of it as we now have the 10 elements. And the first element starts from the index number 0. And then the 10th element has the index number 9, just to assign the first 10 even integers. But we can simplify this by using for loop. And here's the sample of using for loop. Now, you know the for loop already if you are following the series of our Java programming tutorial series. Okay, I just want to highlight here the use of a number.length. Number here is our array name after we declare, and then the length is the property. This one only display, or if you're going to use this in an output statement, it will just display the size of an array. So for instance, if we declare 10 here, so this one is 10. Okay. So it if you don't want this to use this, so you can actually just use 10 there. Okay. But the advantage of using this is if we want to, for example, change the size here, okay, to let's say 1000. So if we have this code number that length, this one will just follow to the new value of our, or the new size of our array. So that's the advantage of that. Okay, instead of having of finding your for loop and then changing it one by one. Okay, and then inside of our loop we have now the assignment statement, just to assign now the values in each element starting from the first element. So for instance, we have only three elements. Okay, I'll just limit to three elements so that we can just have time to trace this code, for example. Okay, now let's try to trace. So during the first iteration, we have the value of I is 0. Okay, so meaning we will have now, we are trying to assign now the this assignment statement to the first element, which is number sub 0. So I is 0 plus 1, so we have 1 times 2, so the first value is 2. And then I plus plus, so I now will become 1, and then is 1 less than 3. That's the number length, for example. So true, so we will again assign the new value to the second element, which is number sub, number sub 1. And this one is sub 2. Okay, and then I now is 1 plus 1, 2 times 2, 4. Okay, and then I plus plus, so this will become now 2. And then is 2 less than 3, for example, number that length? Yes, so we will assign to number sub 2, which is the third element, the 2 plus 1 is 3 times 2, 6. So that's it. So if we have 10, so we'll have a number sub 0 up to number sub 9. So this is the simplest way on how to initialize arrays in Java using for loop. Now, how are we going to access after we assign? It's about time to display now the output. So we can display it one by one, for example, by using the system.out.print. And we will have this type of output of using this. But we can also simplify this by using for loop again. Okay, to access elements of an array, looping through an array elements. So we can simply just have this two lines here. Okay, the for loop. Okay, the same declarations that we have here above here. Okay, and then the output statement. And then, for example, you just want to display all the values in each array elements. This is how we access the array elements. Okay, now if we are going now to combine all these codes, okay, we can just simplify it by having only this one. We have the variable declaration, array declaration, and then the instantiation all in one line. And then if we want to assign values to it, to each elements of our array by using only for loop. And if we want to access the values of each array elements, we also use a for loop. Now, if we want to run this example, we now have this output. So this is the simple way on how to declare, to instantiate, to initialize, and to access array elements. Now, in our second example, I just want to show you that it is possible to combine the initialization, the declaration, initialization, and the instantiation all in one line by having this syntax. For example, we have a double array having the floating point values, or number of values with the decimal points. And the size of the array depends on the number of values that we have here. So for instance, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So meaning we have 5 elements of a number with 90.5 as the value of our first element. This one is second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth. Okay, now So this is what we call the initializer list. As you can see, we used here the curly braces. So this is also a valid syntax. Now, for example, what if we want to just search here from the list the number, the highest number or the largest number, okay, from this list. Okay, so we can simplify it by using for loop. For example, int I is equal to 0, and then the I is less than, I'll just use number dot length, and then we have I plus plus, for example. Okay, and then we just have the for loop here. But before this, let me just show you. Okay, if we have to display the output, the size of an array. Okay, what do you think is the output? Okay, so for instance, if you're going to uh, run this, so the output is 5, meaning this is the size of our array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we are now correct. So I'll just have to comment that one. Okay, let's continue. So after the loop, we need to compare. Okay, compare what? We need to compare the first element, for example, by having the number number sub I, meaning during the first iteration, so the value of I is 0. So number sub 0, I'm referring to this first element. Now, if that one is greater to what? So let me just add here another variable, double, for example, largest. And largest, let's have an initial value of, let's say, 0.0 there. Okay, and then so that we can now compare here. If the value, the first element is greater than the value of largest so far, what are we going to do? We will just simply assign largest, and then the value of our first element. And how are we going to specify it here? By using number as our array name, and then the I. Okay, that's the simplest way on how to assign it there. And then that's it. And then we just have to display it. Let's say system that out that print ln, for example, the largest value. Okay, the largest value, and then plus largest. Okay, let's try to run. So the largest value is 99.6. Okay, so that's it. 99.6. So this is how we declare and assign and instantiate an array elements by using this syntax. Now we can also have a string array having the this values with an initializer list. For example, we have a string stud names with 5 elements. Now our task in this example is to let the user now to enter a name, and then we will determine, for example, if that student is currently enrolled, meaning if that name is in our list or not found. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So to start, first, since we are getting the going to get the user input, we will be needing the scanner. And then, for example, I have here keyboard is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay, and then we need to import util scanner. And then after that, what are we going to do now? So we will have the output statement. For example, system.out that print. Okay, we will prompt the user to enter a student name to be searched. Okay, by using the system.out.print. And then after that, we will now get the user input. But this time, since we are using, we're going to use the loop to find the names here. Okay, if the user have entered Mark, Luke, James, John, Mary, or other names which are not found here. So the input statement, we will put that inside of our loop. So again, we have int I equals to 0, and then I is less than stud name. That's our name, stud names, name of our array, dot length. And then we have I plus plus, I plus plus. Okay, and then we will just put here the initial, the input statement, and we will be needing additional variables here, and then that input is a string. So string, for example, user input, and let's just put initial an empty string there as initial value, and then we have a user input is equal to what, keyboard. This is the what we declare here for us to allow us to access the next, for example, method of scanner. It is to read the user input. Okay, so after reading, what are we going to do now? We need to compare. Okay, we need to compare what if the user input, okay, if the user input is what, is equal to the first element. So we will start comparing it to the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. That's how it works. So how are we going to compare strings? We cannot use here the double equal sign because this one is string. So if you still remember, if you are going to compare strings, we use the method of a string, which is equals. Okay, equals or equals ignore case. If it's equals, this one is a case sensitive. So for example, if the user have entered Mark with capital letter, even if we have a mark here in lowercase, so the result is still not found. It's because this one is an uppercase. If you want to allow the mark or the combination of, let's say, uppercase and lowercase here as same as the lowercase mark here, so we will just use the equals ignore case. Okay, this one is not case sensitive. Now, equals ignore case what? So there should be an argument inside. Okay, to what? So we will be using now the array names. Whatever stud names, sorry. Stud names sub I. Okay, this what are, okay, so we compare now. During the first iteration, after getting the user input, we compare. And then after that, what are we going to do if we compare? Okay. After comparing, if it's found, so what are we going to do? We will assign. Okay, so I have here another output. For example, we have a string output. For example, empty string again. Okay, so output here is equal to what? If it is equal to, for example, that student, okay, the user input. So let's say Mark is currently enrolled, something like that. If the user have entered, for example, Mark. So I'll be using the user input where we store the user input. Okay, it's plus Mark is, for example, currently enrolled, like that. Okay, so that's it. And then what if it's not found? So we will what are we going to do here within the if it's not found, what are we going to do? Okay, so we will just, for example, type here output is equal to let's say for example, user input plus is not in the list. It's not in the list, meaning not found. Okay, and then after that, outside of our loop, we will just simply display the output using system.out.println, and then the output, for example. Okay, now this is an example of a program wherein I just want to show you. Okay, this one is not final yet, but I just want to show you if we, because this is what we think. Okay, normally what we think to solve this particular problem. So let me just run this one for you to see. Okay, so it's very good that we have an error here for you to also know how to solve it. So error compilation problem. Okay, at line number 5. Okay, line number 5. What's the problem in line number 5? There. Okay, so we have more than one curly braces here. That's the only problem. Okay, so here we go now. Enter student name. For example, we have the student name. Okay, enter student name. For example, we have Mark. Okay, Mark. And then we don't have an output. Why? Why we don't have an output here? Okay, let's try. We don't have an output because we put inside the loop the our input statement. This should be outside of our loop because it's only one time that we ask the user to enter a student name, and then we will just check here using the for loop. Okay, if we're going to run this, let's try another. Okay, for example, Mark. Okay, Mark is not in the list. Okay, so we have a runtime or logic error here. Why? Let's try to analyze this one. Okay, it's good that we have an error so that you can join me in solving this problem. Okay, during the first iteration, if since we have entered Mark here and Mark is the first element, we already compare it since we equals ignore case. Okay, that's also correct. Student names sub-0. Okay, we compare and then we assign to output. So supposed to be Mark is currently enrolled. Okay, but the problem here is that after this first iteration, okay, and then it's about time to test during the second iteration. So the if condition here is a false, so automatically it will go down here to else to assign the output that Mark is not in the list. Okay, and then same thing during the third, the fourth, and then the fifth iteration. That is why we received here the logic error. Okay, so the problem is how are we going to solve this problem? If we already found, for example, Mark, Luke, James, John, and Mary, okay, it's we are going now to go out to break out of this for loop. So the use of break statement here is very important in our logic here. Okay, so let's just try to put a break there. If found, so go out and then display the output. That's what our goal. Okay, and then if not after the 5 iteration, so okay, let's try. Let's enter another name. Okay, so for example, okay, we have Mark. Mark is currently enrolled now. Okay, let's try another. For example, we have Mary, the last element. Mary is also currently enrolled. Okay, so that's correct. One more. What if we enter Matthew, which is not in the list? Okay, Matthew is not in the list. Okay, so that's how we solve this problem, a simple problem. Okay, by using the equals ignore case, and then we incorporate the using of arrays, and then array with a string. Okay, so let me show you now the sample run of our last example. Okay, for example, if we run this, it will generate the combination of a 6-digit lottery draw. We have a single digit, for example, here from 0 to 9, 0 to 9. Okay, and then we just, our goal is every time we run here, okay, it will just generate random numbers. Okay, 6-digit lottery draw, for example. Now we can solve this by using the useful that we do by declaring a variables, let's say from 1 to 6, and then we have 6 random statements here. And this topic we already discussed in our previous episode. So I hope you watch that episode about random numbers. And then we display it manually using this uh, code. But we can simplify this by using the Java array. And let me show you the program that I created here a while ago. Okay, so in here, this is the simplified version using array. So we have declared the lottery instead of having so many variables here. We simplify it by just using 1, and then you specify 6 since we need 6-digit. And then to initialize and to generate random numbers, you only need one statement instead of having 6 random statements here. So it's a very important that we use arrays in this type of problem. And to access the array elements, okay, instead of having 6 output statements here, okay, we can simplify that by just using one output statement inside of our loop. Okay, we already discussed this in our previous example. And that's all for today. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, show your love through comments and favorites. God bless and thank you for watching.